the plan, the implementation plan that you're going to give us a copy of, that clearly, well, can you confirm that it contains the 8 billion rand bailout from the taxpayer? And if it does, and that bailout is not granted in February, what is the backup plan?
Honourable Lees, I can confirm that the plan does indeed include the 8 billion rand bailout, because also we were of the opinion that if you look at the Post Bank and the separation thereof, the Post Office had added a lot of value into that entity. And we were of the opinion that we do need to be compensated at the very least, because even as the separation was happening, there were reserves in that account. So it's important that we do believe that that's the one element. The second element is that the Post Office business is actually not a profitable business on its own, not because it cannot be profitable, but because of the universal service obligation that we have for the whole country. We do have to have a post office in KwaNongoma where it will never make money. It will always be a cost center for the post office. So because of that, we do believe that it is not unreasonable for the taxpayer to at least help us to fulfill those obligations. And that's why we are still hopeful that that would happen. But we equally have said we needed to play with scenarios. What if we don't get what we've asked for? What if we don't get anything at all? Then what do we do? So we've built that into the model. We then also said if we get less than what we've asked for, what would then have to happen? So this is a business plan. This is a business case. It is not just a plan that we wrote together and we put together. It is important that we look at, because it's not in our hands whether we do get the money or not. It's outside of our control. So whatever we can control from a management stroke board perspective, we are doing. But yes, the short answer to your question is the 8 billion is factored into that plan, and it would be difficult for the post office if we do not get it. However, we are making sure that we don't stop and wait for the money to come. We are pushing and looking at new business areas, and in fact there are some quite exciting ones that we have already started signing up on, and some of them we are engaging with.
Thanks, CEO. Right, so the creditors are growing, and you're playing with creditors. You're paying off old ones and presumably not paying current ones, but they're growing. Are your employees getting their salaries on time and in full every month? And what is the plan? Well, I'm not sure when you would normally pay bonuses. I would hope. Anyway, my question is, have any bonuses been paid to any executives and staff over the past 2 financial years?
Since I've been with the Post Office for only 6 months now, Mr. Lees, I will then talk about, I'll ask the CFO to confirm whether they have been paid, but the information I have is that none have been paid in the last couple of financial years. That is the first question. The other question that you were raising was around the staff being paid their salaries, and are they getting it on time? So they have up to now received their salaries on time. We have been paying them what is due to them in terms of the net pay. But what we've also been doing, which is a narrative that we do need to correct, is that we have been paying their portion of the medical aid over to the medical aid. The only portion we have not been paying was the employer contribution, because the employer also subsidizes it. And because of our financial situation, we were kind of withholding that, but with a view that that money would be paid over. So the answer to whether employees are getting paid, up to now, yes, they have been paid. Has it been a full salary? Yes, in that sense, it has been a full salary, except that portion of medical aid we have not been paying, which was the employer portion, but also their portion of the provident of the pension fund. So that we have not been able to pay, but we also know that we do have to pay it as soon as our fortunes do turn.
Thanks, CEO. Thank you for your openness about these matters. And could the CFO give us some reassurance about bonuses?
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, in terms of performance bonus for the last 7 to 8 years, SAPO has not paid any performance bonus to any executive or any employee. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. In terms of other forms of bonus, have bonuses of any form been paid out?
So, Chair, if I can come in, there's no bonuses, so we make no provision for any bonuses, neither do we budget for bonuses due to SAPO's financial performance. So we can confirm there's no bonuses paid out or being budgeted for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lenny. Okay, so CEO, you're unable to pay the employer contributions to pension and medical aid. Are the payments to SARS in terms of PAYE, VAT, skills levies, all that, are they up to date? And if not, what is the backlog? Sorry.
Yes, Honorable Lees, they are not up to date. The backlog varies. As at the end of June, the SARS one was sitting at 600 million. The one for the medical aid portion is also around the 600s. We have the UIF as well as the skills development levy as well. They are all outstanding. So all those numbers, all those liabilities are still there. We are in discussions with all of them in terms of how it is that we could pay back or, try to negotiate terms. We are holding meetings with all those creditors, if you want to call SARS a creditor. In terms of the pension and the medical aid, we have come to an agreement with the medical aid in terms of our payment plan, which will kick off in January, the increased amount. But for now, we will continue paying them what we have been paying until the end of the year. With regards to the pension fund, we are in court and we are waiting for a determination from the court on the matter. They did take us to court, but we do acknowledge that that money belongs to the employees. It will have to be paid. It is not SAPO money, and therefore we are doing everything we can to make sure that we pay those monies. So those liabilities do keep growing at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. So, Mr. Chairman, this leads me back to the leadership issue. CEO has been there for 6 months. I assume that these statutory payments have been building up before your time and during your time. Now, there are criminal implications for directors and for executives in this regard. And we saw this happening in SAA, SA Express. I have no doubt in Janelle and the other SOEs we'll find the same picture. And yet, if it were a private company, I have no doubt that SARS would by now have taken action, either civilly or, if necessary, criminally. So CEO, I mean, are you and the board chair, I mean, are you guys not really worried about going to jail for these things? I mean, are you confident that there won't, those are the consequences that won't happen for you? And then it leads me back to the consequences for previous executives, or those responsible anyway, who may have left the organization, like Lindy Wakwele. I mean, surely there should be some sort of criminal charges laid for the lack of payment of statutory contributions.
Honorable Lees, this is a threat we live with every day. We do acknowledge that it is an untenable situation, both severally and personally, for all of us as directors of the company. And as we were saying, we did kind of hang our hopes on the medium-term budget statement, that maybe there would have been something that would have alleviated some of our issues. We do see a light at the end of the tunnel from a SAPO point of view. Our issue is currently timing, but really we are worried about it at board level. The board also discusses it, and the board has then instructed us to do a going concern assessment, which we did internally, and now we have decided to professionalize it and get a professional service provider to do that, so that we are able to give a report to both our principals, the board, and also the likes of the CIPC. And we are hoping that by that time, things would have turned around and that we would not have to go to jail for the transgressions that you highlight.
Thank you, CEO. I think the chances of you going to jail probably are pretty slim, seeing that Tutu Mnyeni didn't go to jail, even though she was declared a delinquent director. But nevertheless, I would not like to be in a position where I could be declared a delinquent director, if nothing else. And so the two of you, I would suggest that I could go out now and make an application to the CIPC or the tribunal to have you declared delinquent directors. I believe there's sufficient grounds to do that. I'm not going to do it, but anyone could do that. So I'm surprised that you're taking this relatively lightly. I know you're trying. It's clear to me that you appear to be trying to do your best to resolve the situation, but yeah, the risk is pretty high. So there you go. So, Mr. Chairman, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you particularly to the board chair and the CEO for answering my questions quite openly, I think. I mean, I'm pretty sure. I'm not thinking that's not the right word to use. Compared with the obfuscation we've had from some who've appeared before this committee, this has been somewhat refreshing. So the two ladies, thank you very much. I've indicated some disquiet with the potential for your reputation, but thank you for answering my questions. And over to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Just before we continue to the next colleague, Honorable Liz, thank you very much for that extensive interrogation of those areas. Let me bring in the AG so that we can conclude on that earlier matter. They came in just as Honorable Liz was beginning his section, and then Honorable Hadebe, you will come in. AG, here's the matter. The audit is outstanding, or rather the submission of the annual report, in part because we are told that you had been unable to conclude on the audit. This is notwithstanding the request for a late submission, given the going concern issues which SAPO is hoping and praying will be addressed in the budget in February. But I think let's get clarity insofar as the extent of the involvement of AG in the delay, so we have got a clear picture as to where that is. So AG, I'll hand over to you, and then Honorable Hadebe, you will come in after that.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, honorable Deputy Minister and other colleagues, good morning still, yes, good morning. My name is Andries Mkhonto from the Office of the Auditor General. Apologies for the misunderstanding initially, Honorable Chair, we just did not receive the invite in time and some technical glitches, but we were then able to successfully join the meeting. Thank you for having also noticed that, Honorable Chair. So, Honorable Chair, on the matter at hand, yes, Honorable Chair, unfortunately, if one considers when we all finalized the audit of the post office, the 1920 audit, Honorable Chair would recall that we only finalized the previous year's financial audit in sometime end of March of this current calendar year. So unfortunately, with the implications of COVID and as well as the request by management in terms of the extensions in the previous financial year to deal with some of the significant issues and findings that we had picked up as a result of the split from the post bank and as well as other shortcomings and gaps, it therefore unfortunately resulted in an overrun. So the unfortunate thing is, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable members, is you'll find a situation where, when one finds yourself in a similar scenario, the particular institutions in the subsequent years would then submit their financial statements on time, but an audit of the size and the magnitude and the issues of the post office and the post bank concurrently requires quite a bit of significant audit effort and attention. So it therefore unfortunately resulted in the audit report being late. Honorable Chair, honorable members, we are busy doing final engagements with management, and hopefully we should have the audit finalized by the end of this particular month, being November, given the situation that we are currently faced with, as well as some of the problems that the institution is currently trying to deal with. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I hope that provides some form of context. I know it's not the answer that sort of says, that's normally required in terms of the legislation as well as the timelines. We do apologize for any inconvenience that these extensions cause on oversight bodies and the ability of oversight bodies to exercise their oversight. But we do certainly hope that we have the understanding and appreciation of the committee. Thanks, Chair.
So, Andres, if I'm hearing you well, 1920 was finalized in 2021.
That's correct, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair would recall there were some challenges in the 1920 financial year with regard to the submission of financial statements as a result of the split. So there was first the late submission, and then also the 2-month extension by the National Treasury as a result of the COVID implications. And then by the time we received the financial statements and the magnitude of the issues that we had to deal with, management also then requested an extension to deal with those issues. And all the combination of all of those issues, unfortunately, Honorable Chair, resulted in the audit report only being finalized on, I think it was the last week in March of 2021. Thanks, Chair.
Right, Honorable Lisa, are you fine?
Mr. Chairman, I was just about to, just a quick question. And has the Minister informed, and I'm sad to say it's only informed and not asked for permission, Parliament about the delay in the annual report? I don't remember seeing such a letter ATC, maybe I missed it.
Okay, we will come to that one. Honorable Hadebe, I've noted that Honorable List. Honorable Hadebe.
No, thanks, Chair. I also wanted to ask the similar question as Honorable List in relation to the AG.
Okay, I'm just checking our records there briefly. I'll come back to you now on that one. Honorable Hadebe, be on standby to begin your section. Can you just get from the department, checking our records? I haven't seen anything on that. Department, have you submitted Minister, have you submitted your letter to inform Parliament of this delay?
Yes, Chair, the letter was tabled with the Speaker of the National Assembly in line with the rules. We will get a copy and share it with yourselves, Chair.
Okay, well, that's fine, because I hadn't seen anything, but we will check also with the Speaker's office. All right, the audit will be completed at the end of November, and there's a request for a postponement until February because of the going concern issues. Honorable Hadebe, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, can I just ask a question from the session that was led by Honorable Liz, and as it relates to what the Deputy Minister highlighted, that on the 6th of October, there was a new turnaround strategy in place. My question, Chair, is that in terms of the report, since 2016, the new turnaround strategies and plan that were adopted then, which included elements of what successful postal operators around the world have implemented. That plan, the postal officer failed to implement any of those. So this time around, the plan that was adopted on the 6th of October, what is it that is new or different from the elements of the successful postal operators around the world? What is it that you're going to implement differently this time around that you have failed to implement? Is your plan still including the elements of successful postal operators around the world?
If I may respond, yes, Honorable Hadebe, the plan does include that, because we knew when we were working on this one, we went back to the previous plan and we looked at the elements that we could lift from that one because they were still relevant in this day and age within the postal service. Because remember, postal service is postal service. So, you know, some elements change, some of them you know, you have to tweak here and there. But yes, that plan is very much a part of the new plan, but we have brought in new initiatives as well. The question that you ask is around implementation. We have also identified that the biggest problem, there is no shortage of good ideas at the SA Post Office, none whatsoever. And there are really good people who are thinking and they can get things done. The only challenge that we've had in the past is that we just did not implement. And which is why we decided this time around not to wait for an injection or capital or anything. We started, you know, implementing the plan as soon as we got the go-ahead from the board, and we've discussed with the ministry. We said there are elements here that we can still implement, even if it's on a phased-in approach. So the biggest failure has been on implementation in particular, but also that is not even in isolation of on its own, because for you to implement a plan, you need some capital injection, you need money to be able to do the things that you say you would do. And I suppose, I wasn't there, but looking at the history, I suppose that that has also been another challenge. There was no money to be able to implement. Even when the money did come at some stage, it was clear that it was used mainly to liquidate the creditors, which we would do slightly differently this time around. We would do a hybrid approach of, yes, you do need to pay the people that you owe money to and then commit to doing that, but you need to implement strategies that will make sure that you are sustainable into the future, so that we don't always go back to the fiscus with a begging bowl. So that is the kind of approach that we are using going forward. Thank you, Honorable Member.
No, thank you, CEO. But in terms of the Aegis report, there was funding support available for your plan. The issue, as you correctly pointed out, was implementation. Have you held accountable those that have failed to implement your plan, so that when you enter into this new turnaround plan, there is zero tolerance on non-compliance and implementation of your plan? Have you set an example? Who was responsible? Are those officials still part of your establishment? Are you not going to repeat allocating tasks to staff that could not implement what previously was approved by the board? So I've got two questions. Who were responsible? Are they part of the implementation of this new turnaround strategy? Have you drawn in new people? What led to you failing to effect consequence management if you have not acted on those people? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I think the question is three-pronged. One is the historical side of things, where people were in the company and the money was used to liquidate previous credit, you know, liabilities. So that is the first issue. The second question you're asking is, were those people held responsible for non-performance necessarily and not being able to do what they are doing? So that will be covered in the investigation that the DM has instructed us to carry out, because it's going to be a very wide-ranging and broad investigation, both in terms of because, you know, we need to know what led to the problem that we are facing currently. But the third element of your question is around, today and tomorrow going forward. We have, with the people that are at SAPO currently, we have given them directives. They know what is expected of them so that they don't feel that they are being ambushed when consequences are meted out to them. And number one. But secondly, I think it's a very critical question that you asked around, did you bring in new resources? We are not in a position to, purely because financially we won't be able to pay for those resources. So now we are in this catch-22 situation. You have to work with what you have, and sometimes it's inadequate, but you have to make do. But at the same time, we are now looking to at least bringing in some of the skill that we need. Remember, we're saying we're going logistics and warehousing. We need logistics specialists who is not among ourselves at this point. We also are looking at digitization, modernization. We need hotshot, IT people who are going to help us to get to that level, which is why we had hoped that with the assistance we had applied for, we could at least get some of those critical resources to come through to come and work with us. So that is the plan. So it's the past and the current and then into the future. Thank you, member.
Okay, so it's still the same people who failed to implement the previous strategy. You've adopted the new strategy with the hope that those that have failed will this time around be able to execute your new turnaround strategy. It's just the old wine in the new bottle.
Let me correct myself. I think that perhaps I didn't explain it properly. Most of the people who were there at the time, especially at executive level, are no longer with SAPO. So some of the people that are there, yes, some of them have been there, but some of them joined SAPO in the last 2 years or so. So there had been people that had come in before my time. And therefore, what we are then going to do is to get new people going forward. So there's a big layer of people who were very much at the top at the time that is no longer within the post of it.
All right, thanks. Chair, let me then move on to my section. I'll be dealing with the irregular expenditure. In your reports and that of the Auditor General report, your balance in terms of the year under review, which is 2019-2020, the opening balance was 1.4 billion of irregular expenditure. And for 2019-2020, you had incurred 215 million of irregular expenditure. What the Auditor General is highlighting is that your systems and processes were effective only on detecting the instances of irregular expenditure and the accurate disclosure of such. However, you were not able to prevent irregular expenditure. You are still continuing to incur irregular expenditure. And I'll list the top 5 incidences of those irregular expenditure. Is that you are paying contracts without the actual contract. 2, you are splitting quotation and deviation where it's not needed. So you split your quotation to avoid competitive bid process. The third aspect is that there are bid amendments that are done with no final board approval. And in all these instances, there has been minimal or no official held accountable for the breach of the supply chain policies. Not only that, also the Constitution of this country, Section 217, that prescribed that your processes ought to be fair, transparent, and competitive. Your response leaves much to be desired in terms of your reasons why you have not effected consequence management. You're saying all transactions were legitimate. You have received value for money. Now the question is, if you have not entered into a competitive bid process, how then do you arrive at the conclusion that you have received value for money? Can you please justify your response and reasoning behind lack of consequence management from the officials that have clearly transgressed and violated your policies and the constitution of this country? Why have you acted on those officials?
Thank you, Honorable Hadebe. With your permission, I'd like to invite the Group CFO together with the head of SCM to take these particular questions. Thank you.
Yes, and we need to break them down. The payment without contracts. You pay people without actually entering into a binding contract. How do you derive what needs to be paid and how much if there's no contract? And how many people were responsible for such? And are those people still within the supply chain policy? Are they still continuing with the practice? And then you respond to the splitting of quotation. Who are the officials responsible for splitting of quotation to avoid competitive bid? That's a deliberate act, because they know that should they have not split those contracts, they would have been forced to go on an open tender processes. So it's a deliberate act which requires specific action and intervention. So if you're when giving a response, I don't want a generic response. It must be a response for all those top 5 incidents of non-compliance. Thank you. Can those that we have assigned to respond, please respond for the sake of time? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'll try and respond to some of the questions of feedback. And the acting G is also, SCM is also in the line, and she would cover the more detail in terms of the questions. So I think the first question was about the contracts. And if we look at, I think on slide 15 of the presentation, we have broke down the amounts of the 198 million weight of spend. The first item was on the guarding with a 78.4 million rand. On dignity services, 42.8 million rand, legal cost 22 million rand, property leases 19.7 million rand, vehicle leases 16.8 million, audit findings 11.6 million, IT software 5 million, and other smaller expenditure of 1.7, totaling the 198 million incurred for the 1920 financial year. In most of these cases, what has happened is that when these contracts expired, the procurement process was initiated, but for whatever reason, there are some valid reasons, or there's a reason that's quoted in the updated presentation that the procurement process was not concluded, and resulting in those expired contracts to be continually used or utilized, resulting in the irregular expenditure. In terms of the splitting of a quotation, what will happen is that for example, the dignity services are 42.8 million rand, where procurement RFP process should have been initiated. The RFQ process was initiated because the threshold for the RFQ is 1 million rand. So in terms of the dignity services of 42.8 million rand, quotations were obtained rather than following the RFP process or the tender process to ensure those contracts are in terms of the procurement process or in terms of the laws or the PFMA. The deviations, there's a schedule of deviation. I think the SCM Acting G can cover that. And so in terms of the Honorable Member indicated, what should have happened is there's also a breakdown in terms of the process, how long SAPO takes to conclude a procurement process. So we also need to beef up the environmental SCM that we're able to conclude this procurement process in time, and in terms of the contract management also. So normally what should have happened is 6 or 7 months before, or 9 months before the contract expiring, the procurement process should have been initiated for these services required, and they need to be concluded timely to ensure by the time that contract expires, we have a new service provider in place to continue with that service. So I would stop there, Chair, and the Acting G, SCM, Shumi, could assist with the following questions. Thank you.
Mr. Govender, you're not responding to my question. You did not ensure that 6 months before the expiry of the contracts, the new contracts are in place. As such, you have made payments without contracts. Who are the responsible persons and officials? And what have you done with those? You knew what needed to be done, and that was not done. As a result, contracts expired, and you entered into a situation of paying people without contracts. That is transgression of the supply chain policy. My interest is, what have you done to remedy the situation and to ensure that it does not occur in future?
So, Honorable Chair, if I can just provide a bit more feedback. So in terms of the services, as the DMO, the department was also requested, so this is relating to the 1920 financial year. Unfortunately, some of those expense or the irregular expenditure 1920 financial, because it's historical, also continued in the 2021 financial year. So the financial auditors still being audited by AG, those irregular expenditures continued in the 2021 financial year. But to answer the question directly in terms of the official, there are various officials responsible for the irregular expenditure. And the previous, I think one of the honorable members asked a question about the suspension. The previous GSEM was also suspended for some of these transgression, and that dismissal process was also concluded. So in terms of the actual expenditure, there are various officials that are responsible, and SCO is indicating some of these officials are no longer with SAPO. But I think the acting GSEM can provide more feedback on the transgression or the details, what the honorable member is requesting. Thank you.
So are you saying you are being general in your response? I want you to be specific. There are figures here. We're talking about 83 million of payment without contracts. Surely you are at the point where by now you would have quantified who did what, for which contract, and what was the action. The AG is complaining about a lack of consequence management. And from your response, I don't hear you giving a satisfactory answer in terms of having acted on those officials. Are you saying all of them have left and none of them are still responsible for what transpired in 2019, 2020? If they have not been held accountable, chances of them continuing with incurring of irregular expenditure are high.
So, Honorable Chair, if you allow us, we have updated the presentation covering the irregular expenditure, and maybe if you allow us to go to each detail of the items, for example, regarding the top 8 categories that makes up the 198 million. So maybe if you allow us, we could go through the presentation, because I don't think the updated presentation was sent to SCOPO. So maybe if we could allow us to go to a detailed presentation from slide number 16, which covers each particular transgression or irregular expenditure. Chair, thank you.
Chair, good morning. The name is Geert Bataille. My hand has been raised for a little while. If I may request that we are allowed to share the screens so that we may take you through to the revised scope of presentation that we have compiled following engagements with the Deputy Minister. We will give detailed explanations in terms of why the irregular expenditure was incurred per the irregular expenditure type. Thank you.
All right, let's do that. Honorable Hadebe, if you are good with that.
Now, Chair, we've had an opportunity to read and understand why it was the case. What we want now, those that are responsible, if they can indicate this is the official that was responsible for this, and in terms of our investigation, this is the outcome. And it defeats the purpose of us, Chair, preparing for these meetings if there will be revised presentation that are not forwarded to us, because we base on our preparation and questioning from what is at our disposal. So in future, please, when you update something, even if we don't necessarily take kind of presentation sent to us late, but it's better late than never.
Okay, no,
Cheers.
I agree with you. Yes, Konon Bizarre. All right, Honorable Hadebe, you will guide this process, and you will, yeah, just guide.
Yes,
it.
but let us not waste time into details and nitty-gritties. All we want is the clear indication of consequence management and those that are responsible. Where are they currently?
Absolutely.
So that, yes, thank you.
Okay, you can guide the process along those lines.
Chair, can I just assist here?
Okay, TM, yes.
Chair, my apologies to Honorable Hadebe. I don't know if I may be of assistance. What is in the report of SAPO in terms of the consequence management is that no one is to be held accountable.
Exactly.
That is the official response. And hence, when we met with them, we requested that they must do an investigation as required by law and identify who were responsible so that there could be consequences. So as of now, that investigation has not yet been conducted. So it will be done as committed here by the CEO and the chairperson of the board. So as matters stand, Honorable Hadebe, there is no official identified to be held responsible for the irregular expenditure. I don't know if I was of assistance. Thank you.
Okay, but Honorable Hadebe, just hang on a sec. Thanks to, but why was that not done? Because that's the standard operating procedure and protocol insofar as these matters are concerned. So I mean, how did SAPO intend on dealing with this matter other than pursuing consequence management as part of their outlook? In as much as one appreciates the intervention that was done by the ministry, DM and minister, but one would be interested to then know what was the thinking of SAPO on this matter.
Thanks, Church. Perhaps just to add on what you're saying, because already they have formulated a stance and the view on this matter that no one should be held accountable. Here comes the new executive authority saying, no, that's unacceptable, go back. Who within SAPO arrive at that conclusion that no one should be held accountable? And are these the same people that you are forcing them to go and hold those that they did not hold accountable? What is it that's going to change when they have already taken a posture that no one should be held accountable? So first tell us who arrived at that particular decision. Is it the current board, the current CEO, the acting CFO? Who exactly arrived at that? I don't want to use other words, but let me just stop there for now, Chair. Thanks.
Let's get a response to that.
CEO, please, and the board, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. Within SAPO, we have what we call the FMC, the Financial Misconduct Committee. So all matters that are deemed irregular, they go through that committee, and it's made up of executives, so it's not at board level. And they then go and explain, and the investigation gets done, and a report gets to be reviewed by the FMC. And on that basis, therefore, the decision would be, yes, there was a transgression, but it was not fraud or anything. It was deemed irregular. And then they, so I'm slightly challenge, Chair, because I'm responding to something that happened 2 years before I joined the company, but I'm here now, so I have to take the responsibility. So it's not necessarily the board. It's within the executive. But as we say, we are reporting on results where those executives are no longer even in the employ of SAPO themselves. Thank you, Chair.
Right. I think let's do this. I think the injunction of the executive authority has our support, because I think the legitimacy and credibility of this process is called into question in itself. And let's await that report then, because I don't think at this point there's any merit in engaging in an incomplete process. And now is November. Can we ask for a report, colleagues, if you are agreeable, even if it's an interim report or a progress report on a review of these decisions, notwithstanding the fact that some persons may no longer be with SAPO, but it is worthy to investigate nonetheless, and then ask for a report to reach us at the end of February as the first interim or progress report along the lines which the DM has highlighted and along the lines that Honorable Hadebe has probed the matter. I hope, colleagues, you are agreeable to that so we can proceed.
Yes, Chair, I agree, but I don't think I've been answered the question. I understand that there's a committee that's responsible for these processes, but ultimately the accounting authority and the board, the accounting and the accounting officer also has a responsibility to ensure that there is consequences. So have you concurred with the report that was finished to you saying no one should be held accountable? And those that will be reviewing this decision, are they still part of your establishment, or is it the new committee altogether?
Ms. Sondange, the group exec for SCM, is ready to respond. Thank you.
Honorable Mkhonto, just stand by. I see your hand.
Good morning. Good morning, honorable members, and good morning to our deputy chair and the CEO and colleagues. My name is Shumi. I'm the acting GESCM. On the question by the Honorable Hadebe, as the CEO has already indicated of our Finance Misconduct Committee, which is guided by the National Treasury Instruction Note number 2 of 2019-2020. There is a clause 22 on when investigations must be conducted. But we take note of what the Deputy Minister indicated to SAPO yesterday, that we need to do the investigations, and also taking note of what the committee is saying, that we need to do the investigation. The reason why it was not done according to clause 22 of this instruction note from Treasury, it indicates that where the accounting officer authority, it said it must conduct investigation if it is suspected that there is possibility of fraud. So as this was discussed at FMC and the report was submitted, there was no possibility of fraud that was detected by the committee. However, as it is indicated now, we will then follow that instruction to do the investigation. But it was not done in line with what the National Treasury Instruction Note number 2 was actually, that indicates. Thank you, Chair.
No, that's fine. Instruction note notwithstanding.
That's not the only instance where you effect consequence management. The PFMA is very clear. Anyone responsible that permitted or caused irregular expenditure, that person must be taken to task It should not only when it's related to fraud. If there's an official who has caused or permitted irregular expenditure, that person must be held accountable.
If I may, Chair, thank you very much for the comment, Honorable Minister. We will look into it, as I've already indicated, that we were guided by the instruction note, but we will, as we submit our report as indicated in February, we will indicate all such things. And we've noted what the PFMA also indicates in terms of that. Thank you, Chair.
So Chair, is the supply chain saying to us, were they not aware of the provision of the PFMA in relation to irregular expenditure?
Chair, if I may please come in. No, we are not saying that, Honorable Chair. We are just indicating in terms of the investigation and so on, what National Treasury says, but we are saying we will submit a report, but we are very much aware of what is expected of us. But we'll submit a report as requested by the committee, and as was discussed as well with the DM yesterday, that we need to investigate, and we will submit that accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, let's do this, because quite frankly, I think there's an over-reliance on instruction notes and the secondary appreciation of the PFMA. And that should not be the case. So I think the directive of the committee stands, so that we can move on this matter, that we want a report, whether an interim or a progress report on investigations into all these areas by the end of February. And then we will deal with the other matters insofar as this instruction note is concerned with National Treasury. So DM, you have got our full support in that regard into these investigations, and then so that you can move on. And we want that report by end of February so that we can read it concurrently with the annual report, which is due to Parliament as per the request that has been made. Colleagues, we've also sent through the letter by the Minister to the Speaker on this matter. Honorable Hadebe, can I just ask you to bamba for 1 second, and Honorable Mkhonto wants to come in momentarily. Honorable Mkhonto, and then Honorable Hadebe, you can proceed after she's done.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you, honorable members, the Deputy Minister and his team. Chair, most of the questions that I had have been covered by other members. You also covered one of the questions that I had when you were trying to close as to when can we expect a progress report in as far as this is concerned. The question that I have, Chair, is about the turnaround strategy. As to, I understand that at the executive level, we have new members that have been hired. The CEO is saying they are going to move from the, maybe I can say, analog system to maybe a digital system that will make things to be user friendly, and them upgrade their performance. But the only question that I have, Chair, is the staff, specifically from the middle management down, adequately qualified to execute these duties, to make sure that SAPO is able to execute the turnaround strategy successfully. Thank you.
All right, let's get a response to that, and then Honorable Hadebe, you can proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honorable Mkhonto, for that question. Noting that SAPO has traditionally been a male business, So our skills were geared towards, fulfilling those needs. But as you clearly state that we are now modernizing and we are digitizing, we therefore require new skills. And we've noted that the short answer actually to your question is no. The staff that you are referring to, because you've also demarcated them very well, that cohort of staff members, they actually are not fully trained, and some of them won't be able to do the work that is required. So we do need to enter into reskilling processes, and some of them will have to shift and reuse elsewhere, because you still need people at the last mile. You still need people to deliver the parcels. So that element will still remain. However, in terms of this new focus area, we do indeed require new skills. Some of our people are young enough to be retrained and reskilled, but at the same time, we are going to need new people. But also, when you're trying to change a culture in an organization like SAPO, you do need new new thinking as well, so that you can get other people who think differently to what has brought you to where you are. So we are going to be embarking on some recruitment of key specific areas, and also looking for those resources. But you are right, that is a big challenge for us. Thank you, Chair.
Right, Honorable Hadebe, we're back into your hands and you can proceed with your section.
Thanks, Chair. Even though the intervention has resulted in some of the questions that I wanted to ask to be postponed until such a report is furnished to us. But some of the issues that I think I can still continue to ask, it's in relation to your bid evaluation committee. AG indicates that they did not pay attention to details when evaluating bids. I would like to get an understanding what sanction has been imposed on the bid evaluation committee for failing to pay attention to details when it comes to evaluating of the bids.
Can we get a response to that?
And can I come in as CEO? The bids evaluation committee, honorable member, there are various committees. It won't be a standing committee, and where there are details not followed, and if it leads to irregular expenditure, and that is also taken through the FMC, and there are consequence reports that are done, and then consequence management that needs to take place. So it really differs on the committee and the details that that have been highlighted, but there is no one standing committee in terms of BEC, of the bid evaluation committee.
Yes, Ms. Sotange, I fully accept and understand that. Hence the question, who were the bid members and what sanction were they given? Surely the AG has given details to what they were referring to when they're saying your bid evaluation committee did not pay attention to detail. You have that information on your disposal. Now the question is, what have you done with those bid committees? I know it's not one, there are many, but there are specific committees that I'm referring to that did not do what they ought to have done. What have you done about those? Are they still part, have you changed those officials? Are they still responsible for evaluating the contracts?
Thank you, honorable member. As I've indicated, in terms of the bid evaluation committees, they differ, they are cross-functional.
No, wait. No. Let's not do this. Honorable Hadebe's question is very specific. The AG would have been specific in the management letters insofar as what they were referring to. Let's not speak in generic terms. I think we are past the point now where it says there are various committees. This is a specific area which was the finding of the AG. And in your responses to the AG, you are also expected to be specific. I think let's not play hide and seek here. The AG's reports are not general or generic. They speak to specific issues. So a bid evaluation committee in the multiple that you have has a finding against it. The question becomes, what have you done about that? I think that is fundamentally what Honorable Hadebe is asking. This is Nchigajo that we're now going to play about multiple committees is not right. Specifically on the ones that were cited, what have you done? That's the issue. I think that's the question that needs a response to.
Thank you, Chair, for your intervention. That's exactly what I was driving at.
Chair, if I may come in, it does seem that there may not have been any action that was taken, but I cannot be conclusive in my report. I would like to ask the indulgence of the committee that we also include that when we give the written response to these questions. So it's a very specific one. We'll go back to what the AG had said, and we would then be specific in terms of what had happened, because I can't myself be conclusive at this point. We apologize for that.
Honorable Hadebe, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, no, Chair, I think we'll be getting the same response. So in essence,
okay, wait, let's do this.
Lack of consequence management in all the issues of concern that have been highlighted by the Auditor General. Nothing has been done, zero, none whatsoever in all the issues. We are here to probe whether or not there has been progress in acting on the findings. It's a very difficult pill to swallow when only now, when we're expected to have been dealing with 2020, 21 other finding, that we are told we will go back, Chair, and look into the matter. The executive authority only took over, dealing about the new executive authority that brought these matters to your attention. So the clear signs and indication are that you are comfortable with the situation as it is. You don't want to hold people accountable. Is that the attitude of the board? Can we perhaps, Chair, get the response from the chair of the board? Because section 51, subsection E, Roman figure 3 of the PFMA also gives the board a power to act on these matters. What were the view and the decision of the board when these issues were brought to their attention as well? Because clearly the management has failed. It's business as usual. They are comfortable with the status quo. Is the board also comfortable with such issues? It can't take the new executive authority to raise these matters and only then you would want to act.
I think that is precisely the point, and it begs the question, where is the audit action plan in response to the audit outcomes of 1920? That's where we are. I think Honorable Hadebe on the right track. That's precisely where we are and specifically where we need to be on this. So let's get a response to that, please.
Thank you. If I may, through you, Chairperson and Honorable Hadebe, with regards to whether the board is comfortable with the status quo, I can absolutely categorically say that the board is not comfortable. The irregular, fruitful, and wasteful expenditure has served on the Audit and Risk Committee Again, I stand to be corrected on which date, in which the Audit and Risk Committee have given instructions to executives. And I have confirmed with the CEO that they are in the process of incorporating that as well. So that will obviously also form part of that. In terms of the audit action plan that the chairperson has referred to, that was also one of the things that the Audit and Risk Committee has indicated, and maybe even the CFO can comment on that. There was an action plan that was instructed, and my understanding is that an action plan has been brought forward or compiled for the executives to action.
What was the instruction from the Audit and Risk Committee, and when was it issued?
Honorable Hadebe, as I say, I need to maybe go back to the notes. I don't know the time, the date. CEO, do you maybe have that at hand for the Honorable to get answered?
So Chair, if you don't know the time, when was it issued, how are you going to know if it has been acted upon? Are you not expecting feedback from your instruction? Surely you should be concerned like we do, and at your disposal, it should be a matter of when are we getting feedback. You should be in a position to understand whether or not your instruction has been carried out.
I do understand, and I take note of your concern, and once again, it remains a concern for me as well. I have to admit that I have been removed from the Audit and Risk Committee, so I don't have sight of what they have discussed on this matter. The removal of myself was in line with King, so that the chairperson of the board doesn't sit on the Audit and Risk Committee as well.
But ultimately, these issues will be referred to the board. All committees reports to the board, and that's where you approve their recommendations. And you are better placed because you are from that committee. So I'm saying, if you are serious about consequence management, you can't have such a report at our disposal now, where the Auditor General would reflect on zero consequence and effective consequence management. Surely something should have been done long ago. At least by now, you should be in a position of perhaps having a preliminary report into the instruction that was issued by the Audit and Risk Committee. I don't think that instruction is an open-ended instruction. It has timeframes for action to be taken. Am I correct?
As a general rule, yes, indeed, that does have a time frame.
All right, but in the specific case now, moving away from general and the specificities of SAPO.
With regards to this specific one, I need to apologize to this committee because I did not go back to my notes with regards to the Audit and Risk Committee that I sat on at that point in time. So I cannot say categorically whether timelines were instructed at that point in time, honorable members.
So who's responsible to implement your instruction? Perhaps that person is better placed to respond. Instruction was sent to someone to effect.
Yes, again, if I had, maybe if I can go off camera and just maybe see if I can find my notes, because I can't remember whether the current CEO was part of that, but yes, indeed, that instruction was given to executives.
Can the executive respond?
Thank you, Chair. I would like the CFO to come in with more detail, but the information I have at hand is that in January, as far back as January 2021, the FMC did present to the ARC, and the Audit and Risk Committee then instructed on that date that there should be consequence management. And what has since been happening is that there have been warnings and given to some of the people that have been found to have been in contravention since that time. And also, even during my time, because that instruction came before my time, but during my time as well, the Audit and Risk Committee did recommit and said that it's important that there are consequences. And what we have done is we have kind of projectized this, dealing with all the audit findings, and the action plan had been dealt with even at EXCO level, making sure that we are dealing with the high level findings and then the next level, etc. So it's an ongoing process, but there was an instruction in January already, and there have been some people who were given warnings on some of these issues. That is the information I have at hand currently, Chair, but perhaps the CFO and even the acting GE for SCM could assist as well.
Right.
Thank you, CEO. Oh, sorry.
All right, Honorable Hadebe, can we just do this, because I'm getting a sense of isolated access to information insofar as what we're being told. Can I just, if I may, go back a little bit? Madam Chair, how long have you been acting as Chair?
Chairperson, I've been acting since last year, August.
Right, so you would have left the Audit and Risk Committee at that time in August 2020.
Actually not, it was more recent than that. We only affected that later.
So you would then should have been aware of the January resolutions.
Yes.
So why is it so hard to get this information to come out? Yeah, I think the dilemma here is what
Also, Chair, how many meetings? Okay.
Yeah,
how many meetings since January have you held as an Audit and Risk Committee? Because surely by then, my understanding is that you sit at least once quarterly. You're supposed to have been having at least 3 meetings since then. Surely the progress.
And how many board meetings have sat this year?
For you not to be in a position to have some knowledge of the progress in relation to your instructions. You don't sit in board for the sake of sitting for formality, ticking boxes that there were board meetings. You deliberate on matters that are affecting SAPO. You take resolutions. One expects that those resolutions must yield positive results. And for you to achieve such positive results, it has to be based on tangible outcomes. From January, we're in November, towards the end of the year. You don't know what happened to an instruction that was effected early this year.
All right, how many board meetings have taken place this year? So we can go through this seriatim.
Company Secretary, can you maybe assist with how many board meetings?
You see, this goes to what Honorable Lees raised earlier on about the non-attendance of board members at this meeting. So how many meetings of the board have sat this year?
Chairperson, members, if I may respond, Dawood Dada, the company secretary. Besides the scheduled quarterly meetings that the board had, which we had every quarter, we had 14 meetings in total, including the regular quarterly meetings.
And the Audit and Risk Committee has met how many times?
If I may just have a minute to just count them on my screen, just a sec, apologies for that. Chair and members, 5 audit committee meetings in this calendar year, 5 audit committee meetings. Thank you.
Right. So the issues we are raising, have those not been discussed at board level?
If I may answer, Honorable Schlingwa. With regards to, so there's obviously a proposed plan and what have been coming through from the executives at the committee levels. So normally what happens is the committees then decide what to bring to the board with regards to discussions.
So have the issues we are raising been brought to the board?
It has not been brought to the board.
Yeah, you know, I'm getting a sense here, and I may be wrong, but I doubt I am. There is seemingly a laissez-faire attitude to these issues at board level, and it doesn't inspire any confidence, actually. Given the extent of the problems and the fact that you are wanting a bailout, I would really want to believe that the board would be far sharper on these matters than is currently being presented. I'm not sure that one is confident that the quality of responses does justice to the outlook of the requests that you have. And the fact that some of the issues have had to be raised by a new executive authority, which came in August, and they've been in office now for September, October, November, some 3 months. It begs the question, what has been happening prior to that? I mean, some of these things, as the CEO is saying, are from January as resolutions. It's now November. And I'm sitting here quite worried, actually, as to the state of affairs, or insofar as the quality due process being employed to handle and process issues. I mean, that's just my assessment. I doubt I'm wrong, though. But if I am, then convince me with responses which says the board is grappling with these matters you know, with the kind of urgency and agility that is required by the dire state in which the South African Post Office is in. Mind you, you want a bailout. So I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced, actually. And there is an isolation of issues. There does not seem to be any coherence in the flow of information or access to information. It doesn't inspire confidence. And I'm worried.
Chairperson, if I may, so I do take note of your comment with regards to that, and I think it also needs to maybe just be said, and you know, I think we also need to understand that the executives are dealing with you know, financial issues, and there is quite a number of instances where you know, effectively what normally would have been dealt with in a normal organization with your more senior manager level is actually being dealt with executive level. So what the board are requesting from executives doesn't always get executed with speed due to the fact that time constraints from the executive side is a problem. I do take note, and I will make sure that we give this absolute you know, priority as well with regards to you know, getting to a position where the board actually gets their questions answered. I'll yes, if I may ask for that indulgence as well, I'll appreciate that.
No, wait. Sorry, Honorable Hadebe, wait. So the board, which is the accounting authority, is making requests to the executive for information, and that's not being done. You've had 14 meetings this year. That on its own, I don't know. Is that the implication of the statement that you're making? That you are not receiving information from the executives?
So again, because I haven't been in the last few audit and risk committee meetings, I can't state what has been transpired in those meetings, honourable member. So all that I can say that is it didn't come through to the board, and obviously for governance purposes, that actually needs to go through the audit and risk committee first.
Chair, you see, I think I understand why now board members are not here, because you would have had the chairperson of the Audit and Risk Committee forming part of this meeting, and they would have been in a position to respond to these questions. It's not like you have said earlier on and advised that they shouldn't attend. I think it's deliberate. From where I'm sitting, Chair, because board members sit in these committees, so would have been in a position to get responses. Clearly, you don't own monopoly of wisdom, hence you are divided into committees. You are unable to respond now to questions as the chair. You will have to go and report and source information from some of your colleagues. This does not augur well with us. We are wasting time because your board members are not here. That would have assisted you in providing answers to these questions.
Yeah.
The Audit and Risk Committee reports, it's accountable to the board. And Section 51, Chair of the PFMA, says the accounting authority must take action and disciplinary steps for officials that have caused and permitted irregular expenditure. You are saying to us the board is not aware of your instruction. Where do the risk committee report to if your instructions are not at the purview of the board?
All right, just Honorable Hadebe, I'm seeing a hand. Mavivi Miyagayaga, please introduce yourself and your designation.
Good afternoon, Chair and honorable members. I tuned in, but the Chair is supposed to be representing us. I just want to help in terms of the last meeting of the board.
Your designation?
I'm a non-executive board member who was elected in the last board selection.
Okay.
In the last meeting of the board, Chair,
if you can just hold on a second. You say that you just tuned in because the chair was supposed to be representing you. That qualification needs explanation before you proceed. Was it the decision of the board that it's the chairperson who will represent you?
Yes, Chair. In all the parliamentary processes.
All right, and so now you are deviating.
The chairperson represents us, but we do listen to the discussion.
And so now you are deviating from that resolution. Why?
I'm not deviating, I'm just trying to help.
Yeah, but now you see, I'll let you proceed, but colleagues, do you see the problem we are faced with here? You see the challenge we are faced with?
Yes, Chair, I'm with you.
It's a big problem. I mean, the board member, because the board is individually and collectively and severally responsible and accountable. But there's a decision of the board, I suppose I would imagine, that the chair represents. But the chair said to us they were advised that they need not be here. That's the first instance. I don't know, colleagues, you will make an input. I think it may be to our benefit that we schedule a meeting with the full complement of the board of SAPO, including all the chairs of the subcommittees, so that we can, I think this kind of fractured governance detail or outlook is a problem. The chair of the board is saying they're not receiving information. And because now, yeah, but Honorable Hadebe, I'm glad you say you get me. You understand where I'm coming from with this observation I'm making. I'm just going to ask Umam to just hold on a second as a board member. Honorable Liz.
Mr. Chairman, I thought you were asking for our sort of input on this matter.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, sure.
And I would concur with you that would be a sensible move given the situation with SAPO. But may I propose that such a meeting should include an oversight visit for the committee to the central sorting warehouse or facility. I think it's somewhere in Gauteng between Tshwane and the airport. There's a massive operation there that my last reports were that it was again pretty chaotic. So perhaps we can kill two birds with one stone. Thank you.
Let me go to Maumiagayaga for her to make her input that she wanted to make, having underscored the issues that I wanted to make. She indicated she was coming in to help. Ma'am, let me hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we must sort out what you are saying, whether we participate as board members in parliamentary proceedings, because I don't have the mandate to participate. So we rely on the chair to give information to Parliament. So I will have to discuss that issue so that we are able also to give whatever information we have.
So, Chair.
Is this a
Chair,
board?
Chair,
Okay,
Chair.
Babu Somyo, come in.
No, this board member is not assisting us. Nor is she helping SAPO. These are their issues which they ought to deal with within SAPO. And our view so far is, as indicated by yourself, that would require a full board complement to meet with us. And I would really, one, for progress sake, ask that let us take that as our view. And secondly, that might be linked with what Lias is proposing, so that we are closer to where the actual work is taking place. Because these matters are governance matters. And as governance matters, they require the board in its own totality to deal with. It's not wrong to have the chair mandated by the board to deal with matters of the board. But in this instance, we feel that we're not receiving the actual responses that would need, which they need some form of assistance. And this board member comes here and becomes a crybaby, and is not assisting us. You see, so it's good as not making any reference to these kinds of instances. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Dex and Honorable Tolashe, and then we will make a determination after those two inputs.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, Chairperson, sometimes one doesn't feel like commenting when you listen to these kind of debates and reports that you receive. Now, I think it's best if we rather just move on and don't continue with this board member, because it's problematic when a board member doesn't know that he or she has to participate in government processes. The board member says, I'm not aware that we should participate in government processes. That's already problematic. The kind of boards that we are appointing, that what kind of induction took place when those board members was appointed. And I listened to Honorable Lees earlier on saying that the board members can be taken, these board members qualify to be taken to court to be declared delinquent. Now, I think it's best if we move on, because it seems like the board members are not aware about their duties and functions and roles and legal requirements that they of being board members. So it's best if we move on, Chair, and not delay any further on this matter. Thank you.
All right, Mam Tolashe, thanks you, Babu Dex.
Good day, Honorable Chairperson and colleagues. I think I agree fully with the two speakers. However, it was a blessing in disguise that this honorable board member came out. We nearly left with a wrong impression that the board is coherent, of which now we know that it is not anyway. Thank you very much, Chair. I agree with the speakers that inputted earlier. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think let me just get one clarity on this matter, and then we'll make a decision. It's to say the chairperson, acting chair of the board, said they were advised that only the chair should attend. On whose advice was that?
Chairperson, it was on the advice of the company secretary.
Okay. Company secretary, on what basis did you make that advice?
Chairperson, members, the post office interacts largely with the portfolio committee on communications, and of all of those meetings, the chairperson would be representing SAPO with the executives, and the invite would be sent to all other members because it is an open forum. Even members from the public may attend those meetings. So that is the standing arrangement that we have. And then the chairperson.
With arrangement we have with who?
With the board.
Right.
So
did you care to communicate that with SCOPA?
Chairperson, in this instance, we had the preparatory meetings with the deputy minister, and only the chairperson was invited to the preparatory meetings. So we therefore did
That's
not
your own
invite.
internal arrangement. I'm asking you, did you communicate your arrangement with SCOPA?
No, chairperson, we did not.
Yeah, so then let's not then migrate standard operating procedures of other committees with ourselves, because this is a different kettle of interaction and engagement. It's not here. So that was definitely an error on your part, and the guidance and advice is wrong. The board is the accounting authority, not an individual of the board. It's the board, because it's decisions of the collective which guide the entity in the execution of its work. And I think what has transpired here today, to have a preparatory meeting with only one member. Yeah, I'm not getting involved in your internal affairs. What is clearly at play here, there are serious lapses as far as I'm concerned, and so far as the operations are concerned. And this is precisely why the entity is where it is. This is totally unacceptable and unbecoming of such an institution. And quite frankly, it doesn't inspire any confidence, nor does it satisfy us that things will turn around with the kind of urgency that is required. So what we're going to do is, colleagues, we are going to end the meeting here. Well, I'm not sure whether we're in a position to proceed with the kind of arrangement which has played out, Honorable Hadebe, and have a new date with the full complement of the board. You have also got serious issues you need to discuss with the Audit and Risk Committee. And we are not going to be able to get the responses that you want under the current arrangement. So I think in totality, you always say we'll end up crucifying the wrong Jesus. Here you are, the absence of the board for me, along the lines which have been explained now, speaks to the shortcomings which have led us to where we are. There have been 14 meetings this year, yet the answers are worrying. So I'm not, but yeah, let me put it to you, colleagues, whether we proceed or not in so far as how things are, and then we will make a determination there. So let me put it to you, colleagues.
Yeah, Chair, can I just ask one question? Let's move on in relation to the Audit and Risk Committee, and ask one question and then we close. It's in relation to the staff in the supply chain management.
Okay, that's fine. You can proceed.
Yes. AG has indicated that there's inadequate training of staff in the supply chain management, and that training ought to have assisted them to understand and interpret legislation correctly that are relevant to supply chain management. So what I want to get clarity on is, why are you setting up your staff for failure by not training them? Clearly, they are unable to correctly interpret legislation as it relates to supply chain. Have you acted on this finding, and have you trained the staff? What type of training have they received to date? Are they now equal to the task? Are they able to interpret correctly the applicable legislation in relation to supply chain?
All right, let's get a response to that.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and the Honorable Member. We have an Honorable Member embarked on a training with the staff. We are scattered regionally and also the head office staff. So we have embarked on a training of our policy with the staff, where we picked up what happens is we also have a spend report that we do on a monthly basis, and where we pick up irregularities. That's when we, expanded our training to the regional colleagues as well. There is a senior manager responsible for the regions looking into training them. However, at the head of SCM, I've taken that upon this level to actually do that. So we have, on a monthly basis, as we are going through our policy review and our processes, have actually embarked on a serious training, a vigorous training, and on issues where there was misinterpretation of the regulation, those things were corrected, and there were corrective action taken against such employees where they see that they were of a different opinion to what has been, what is in the policy. So we have embarked on that, and I am very confident that in the new financial year, because I started acting as well later, beginning of 2021. However, we are confident that in the new financial year, we will not see all the issues that the Honorable Member was raising in terms of splitting of orders and some, smaller orders that are being done. So on training, I know we did lack, because we're also looking into having funds to take people for training, but we do not have such funds in SAPO. Treasury also did come in to train our staff, but on-the-job training is happening vigorously at SCM with all the staff. Thank you, Chair.
So you're saying you've done in-house training, it's not accredited training. Have you done a skills audit to ascertain what type of training is required in terms of capacitating your members? It appears to me from your response that it's just a crash course training that you are talking to. When staff members are responsible for supply chain, there ought to be a very clear training which is targeted at specific needs of your officials. It's not just a crash course type of a training. Was your training informed by the skills audit, the need of each and every member? I'm not clear on that aspect. Are these members who are serving in the finance department and supply chain in particular suitable officials, qualified, and the training that is needed, is it